Hi Year 6, my turn to read you The Jam Donut That Ruined My Life. I think Mrs. Ross got up to a bit of a cliffhanger where possibly Roman might be about to get a girlfriend. So here we go. The Dark Zone. Jane's question was too much for our classmates. They all suddenly went mental, leaping up and down like frenzied monkeys. Rosie Taylor put her hands on her hips. I'd never have put you two together. Jane, Roman's so... She looked me up and down. Disgusting and weird. I'm standing right here, I said. Even though I've never understood why, Rosie is always nasty to me. E.g., last week she told Mrs. MacDonald that I'd hidden the school goldfish in my underpants. It turned out that Gamble had eaten it. In Year 5, for some reason, she spread a rumour that I had 8 nipples like a cat. Still, just because I'm used to her being horrible all the time, it doesn't mean I like it. Well, said Jane coolly, I think Roman's got lots of good things going for him. Plus, he's totally cute. I felt myself going red. No one had ever called me totally cute before. Apart from Mum, who says I've got big brown eyes like a baby camel, hair like a poodle, and a face like a sweet angel. I'm not trying to boast, by the way. I know all mums say that sort of stuff, even if their kids look like swamp monsters. Whatevs, said Rosie, pouting and showing Jane the palm of her hand. She turned to the rest of the line and swept her hair back dramatically. It's official, people. We'll have to call them Joe Man or Romaine. They're an item now. Yes, we are, said Jane to no one in particular. I have to say she looked extremely pleased with herself. Yuck, said Rosie. Pass me the sick bucket, Kevin. I gulped. I mean, being Jane's boyfriend was pretty epic news, but still, it would have been nice to have had some warning so I could prepare myself. Ahem, I said to Jane. Just so I know, what exactly do I have to do? Jane patted my head. Don't worry, we don't have to kiss each other or anything. Phew, I said. Don't get me wrong, she didn't look like she was carrying any diseases, but still, if putting on trousers can kill you, imagine what kissing a girl can do. We'll just walk around together and stuff, she said, twirling her hair around her finger. Fish are so romantic. I had no idea if this was true or not, but I needed to say something boy-friendly. How about a quick joke, I thought. I cleared my throat. Well, in that case, I said, I'll send you a tin of tuna on Valentine's Day. Jane laughed. You're so funny, Roman. Yes, it turned out I was brilliant at being a boyfriend. But of course you won't send me a tin of tuna, she said, her face suddenly turning serious. You'll send me a nice card and a teddy bear, and you'll write me a poem as well, because that's what boyfriends do. Oh, I said, my palms beginning to sweat. That was a lot to remember. I wished I'd brought a pad with me to jot it all down. Maybe being a boyfriend wasn't quite as easy or fun as it looked. Okay. She wrinkled her nose up at me. You're so sweet. The entrance to the aquarium was shaped like a shark's open mouth. I knew how harmless sharks are, so I thought this was pretty cool. Jane didn't. Oh, Roman, she said, gripping my arm. I'm so scared of sharks. This was officially the first time that a girl had ever held my arm. I wasn't sure what to do, so I decided to make her feel better using a fact. Actually, you should be more scared of your own trousers, I said. Jane unhooked her arm from mine and looked at me strangely. There was a long, uncomfortable silence, which was only broken when Gamble suddenly clambered up on top of the entrance and rode the shark's nose like a horse, screeching, Yee-haw! Ride 'em, shark boy! When Miss Clegg eventually pulled him down by the ankle, we trooped into the foyer. Mrs. MacDonald handed everyone a clipboard and told us to take notes and draw pictures of anything interesting. Gamble bashed each of us on the head with his as he walked past. The first room we went into was called the Dark Zone. It was pitch black, with dimly lit tanks full of strange-looking deep-sea fish. There were loads of mums and toddlers in there, and the kids were all running about screaming. Dark and noisy, I thought. The perfect place to eat my donuts. As the rest of the class dodged past the little ones to huddle round the tanks, I hung back. I reached into my pocket. There was a tap on my shoulder. Hi, Roman, whispered Jane into my ear. I wondered where you'd gone. Oh, hi, I said, quickly pulling my hand out. So, Rosie mentioned something on the bus, said Jane. Something about, I don't know, a jam donut or something? I'm not sure what you mean, I lied. I didn't want the whole world to know about it. And I just thought, said Jane, like she hadn't heard me, that since you're such an amazing boyfriend, you might just let me have a tiny nibble. In the green light from the tanks, her eyes twinkled like jelly tots on a birthday cake. I did my best to say no to her. But I'm really hungry, I said, and I haven't had any breakfast. Jane suddenly looked really sad. My mum and dad won't let me have anything sweet at home, she said, wiping something out of her eye. And I don't get pocket money, so I never get the chance to buy a donut for myself. You'll share an incy bit with me, won't you, Romy? Pretty please. I didn't know what to do. I felt sorry for her. Imagine a life without donuts. What would you have to live for? But still, this wasn't just any old cake she was asking for. A horrible thought came into my head. You're not just going out with me for my donut, are you? I said. Jane's eyes opened wide. Absolutely not. She said it so loudly that half the class turned around. Check it out, peeps. Looks like Joman's relationship is on the rocks, grinned Rosie. A few people sniggered before turning back to the tanks. I've always liked you, continued Jane, looking at her shoes. It's just a total coincidence that on the day you become my boyfriend, you just happen to have a delicious jam donut in your pocket. She smiled at me. I didn't know whether or not to believe her. Well, thankfully I was interrupted by Mrs. McDonald screaming, Get out of here! Everything starts to go wrong. Darren Gamble was inside one of the tanks. He was holding his breath and doing breaststroke from one side to the other. People were slapping the green, scummy glass and laughing and cheering. It took me a moment to realise there wasn't actually any water in the tank. There was a big sign outside that read, Jellyfish moved, cleaning in progress. But even by his standards, this was pretty nuts and I didn't like it at all. When they'd managed to get him out, there was a door behind the tank that some idiot had left unlocked. Mrs. McDonald asked Miss Clegg to hold Gamble's hand. Miss Clegg put on a glove as though Gamble's hand was covered in toxic waste. Knowing Gamble, this wasn't completely impossible. Right, next room, said Mrs. McDonald, herding us out. Her cheeks were now the same colour as the fire engine. Halfway along a bright corridor, everyone suddenly stopped. A little girl about 3 years old was sitting on her potty right in front of us and wailing, Wee not come, wee not come. Cool, said Gamble. Okay, darling, said her mum, trying to sound calm but not really doing a very good job. I told you this wasn't a good potty place. Let's try somewhere else. No! Screamed the girl, clamping her hands round the potty. Wee right here. The mum bit her lip and looked at Mrs. McDonald. Don't worry, we've all been there, joked Mrs. McDonald. By this, I hope she meant that she'd been the parent of a small child. The idea of Mrs. McDonald using a potty was not something I wanted to think about. Stay left, everyone. We walked in line past the potty and into the next room, which was called Shallow Hall. It was much lighter than the dark zone. It would be way harder to eat my donut in there. Inside the hall there were 2 large shallow pools that you could lean over the side of. In one there was a selection of rays and crabs. The other one had a big sign on it that read, Danger, poisonous jellyfish, keep hands out. I guess this was where they'd been moved to from the empty tank in the other room. While the class began drawing the rays, Gamble leaned right over and shoved his head under the water and then shook it all off like a wet dog. Shall we have our donut now? Said Jane, smiling sweetly at me. Our donut? Good grief, since when had it become our donut? I didn't like the sound of this at all. I'm not sure, I said uneasily. Jane's bottom lip began to wobble. All right, I said. The last thing I wanted to do was upset her. We hadn't even had our 10-minute anniversary yet. I looked over to Mrs. McDonald. She had turned away from everyone and was talking on her mobile phone. By the sound of things, she wasn't happy. I caught the odd phrase like, Yes, you buffoon, I know he's put on weight. What do I pay you for? I don't think teachers are allowed to chat on their mobile phones when they're meant to be looking after children, but this was brilliant. She was totally distracted. I had to grab my chance. I reached into my pocket and carefully pulled out the jam donut. Peeling off the cling film and covering it with my clipboard, I broke off a tiny bit and placed it into Jane's hand. This made me feel like a total hero. Like I'd just given her one of my kidneys or something. Yep, I was a terrific boyfriend. Jane looked at it for a moment. Nice one, Roman, I thought. She's so delighted that she's speechless. Pretty awesome, eh? I said cheerfully. Don't eat it all at once. She slowly raised her eyes to mine. A sweaty little crumb, she hissed. Is that all I'm worth to you? But, I said, totally surprised. What's wrong with it? She held it up to my face. Firstly, you'd need a microscope to see it, she said. And secondly, it's warm. I hunched my shoulders. I'm sorry, it's been in my pocket for an hour. Are you trying to make me sad? She said, her voice cracking and her face crumpling up. I thought you were kind. This was terrible. I thought she'd be delighted, but she was weeping. People were staring at us. I needed to do something fast. Desperately, I split the whole thing in two, and as jam oozed out onto my fingers, I handed her half. Well, okay, quite a bit less than half. Jane brightened up immediately. Thanks, Roman, she chirped. Hang on, I said. Were you pretending to cry? Before I could finish, Jane dived in suddenly and kissed me on the cheek. This wasn't actually as bad as I'd feared. In fact, it was pretty ace. I let out a noise that sounded a bit like "Yeep." This is so romantic, she said. The romantic mood was rather spoiled by the little girl crying from the corridor. Wee wee, come soon! Wee wee, come soon! Cover me, said Jane, bending her head down to eat the donut. I stood in front of her and tried to look on the bright side. I'd lost almost half a donut to Jane Dixon, but she was my girlfriend, and she was nice. Maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Maybe after this she'd get hold of some money and start buying them for me. Maybe she'd bring me a whole box of donuts every single day. Yes, that would be brilliant. And then everything started to go wrong. Giz a bit, said Gamble, suddenly appearing behind me. I quickly turned round, holding my half donut behind my back. No, said Jane, doing the same. She hadn't quite managed to get it into her mouth. He's my boyfriend, so he only shares with me. Shot it, Melonhead, said Gamble. His face and hair were still soaked. Jane turned to me. She was fuming. Are you going to let him speak to me like that? Nobody had told me that being a boyfriend meant having to stand up to nutters. I don't want to sound like a wimp, but come on. We are talking about a kid who once bit a duck in the playground. Come on, why are you being so horrible? I just want a bit of your donut, innit? Said Gamble, shaking me by the shoulders. Thankfully, Mrs. Clegg stepped in for a change. Darren, she called in her bored voice. Darren, she called in her bored voice. Come and draw this flat thing over here, whatever it is. It's all right, you can save me a bit for later, said Gamble before bouncing off. Wonderful. Don't be scared of him, said Jane. If you're not having it, I will. Well, that sealed it. She might have been my girlfriend, but there was no way Jane was getting the whole thing. In any case, maybe he'd forget. Gamble has a terrible memory. On Friday, he forgot to put on his trousers after PE and accidentally went out to play in his undies. Actually, knowing Gamble, this might not have been an accident. I peered over the barrier into the Stingray tank. Then I took the rest of the donut in my cupped hand and, pretending to cough, lifted it up to my mouth. My open mouth. Thwap! Something cold and wet smashed me in the face. Another cliffhanger. I hope you're enjoying this story. I'm really enjoying reading it to you. Miss you lots. Wish I could read it to you in person, but this is the next best thing.